Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from PJ Media dated October 22nd. It says, London falling. At what point is Britain no longer an ally? And I think that's a question that we're going to need to start taking very seriously now, considering the demographic change, if you will, of what's going on there. And gee, what could that be referring to? I don't know. So it says, our special relationship isn't doing so well lately. The bloodlines we forged with each other in the furnaces of the two world wars are frayed. This is partially due to a lack of leadership. Great Britain hasn't had a Churchill or Thatcher since, well, Churchill or Thatcher. The Bush-Blair alliance was, in large part, an appearance only, as millions of Brits took to the streets post 9/11 to oppose their government's assistance to us. And whereas at least half of the United States continues to vigorously defend ideas like free speech, ideas that are vital to the survival of liberal democracy, our friends across the pond seem content to surrender such rights in return for increasingly vacuous guarantees of cradle-to-grave entitlement. But where things are really going south quickly is the fact that, sooner rather than later, Great Britain will cease to be a liberal democracy or even a socialist faux democracy and will rise from the ashes of a postmodern childless hedonism as a full-blown Islamic caliphate. Sure, there will still be people who look English, speak English, and think English. They might even retain a statistical demographic majority for a couple more decades. But for all intents and purposes, Great Britain will have become West Pakistan, and it will govern as such. This begs the question. At that point, how do we reassess our special relationship with a people, specifically the remaining English people, who no longer possess the ability or will to govern the land from which that special relationship was forged? Do we maintain a friendly relationship with specific political parties but not the central government? Do we help them establish a government in exile? Will the official British government retain NATO membership? What do we do about a nuclear arms stockpile once controlled by our strongest ally but now in possession of Islamists using that ally as a puppet? What happens if an Islamist-run Great Britain acts with hostility towards our other allies? Yeah, that's going to be something of a problem. It says these are questions that we should have dealt with when Turkey experienced the same decline into Islamic fanaticism. But both of our major political parties, along with our European allies, were too busy trying to maintain the status quo. I ask these questions not so much with an assumption that we will simply no longer be allies with Great Britain. I think that's a given. I ask these questions based on a need to be prepared to have a plan. Once Islamists run Great Britain, what economic, diplomatic, and military steps do we take to counter this newfound enemy? In normal circumstances, I would expect a fledgling Islamist government to play up to Western sympathies on one hand by showing us that they're not behaving straight up like the Taliban, while on the other hand continuing to chip away at fundamental human rights at home while ramping up efforts to accelerate the Islamization of what remains of mainland Europe. But what of its nuclear arsenal? What of its overseas military installations in Diego Garcia and elsewhere? Do we preemptively destroy the former and appropriate the latter? It is enough to have to deal with stopping the Islamist regime of Iran from attempting to get nukes. Do we really want that same problem, that same scenario, just across the Atlantic? It says, what if an Islamist government in London starts doing other Taliban-esque things, like destroying ancient landmarks, cathedrals, and priceless art? What if they start imprisoning patriotic, resisting Brits with the acquiescence of Starmer-type Brits? So it's kind of heading in that direction right now. So do we intervene to help the patriotic Brits? Do we arm and fund it underground as well as we did in France and Norway? If you're curious as to what a scenario would look like wherein the American military intervenes and temporarily occupies England for the purpose of protecting the remaining Brits and restoring them to their nation after bloodthirsty, unthinkable brutes have overrun it, the movie 28 Weeks Later comes to mind. On a side note, I haven't seen 28 Years Later yet. Same here, I have not seen that either. But a friend told me it's light on the zombies and heavy on the personal story. Bummer. It says, but jesting aside, it is not inconceivable that we might find ourselves in a similar situation in the not too distant future, in which we need to militarily take control of the British Isles after they've been overthrown. The massive street demonstrations against the government-sanctioned Islamization of their cities and neighborhoods was admirable, but too little, too late. I have no idea what the logistics of such an intervention would look like, nor how well it would fare with the American public. I'm just saying I hope our government is working up contingency plans for it. I'm sure they are. Because while they're at it, they should work up similar plans for France, Germany, the Netherlands, Dearborn, Minneapolis, and New York City. I thought they were going to mention at least New York City, given the mayoral election that's about to happen there. So, and then it's just a shill sentence for the website. So, but yeah, I mean, it's going to happen, and they don't want to do anything about it because it's that suicidal empathy strikes again. So do you agree with this or not? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.